I am Kevin and I approve of this message. Well, Samantha. Is it not?
Well, it says it's being sent to YouTube now.
Yep. It, I think, by Jove, I think I've got it. And let me just make sure it's working. Good evening, everyone. We are just about to get started. I am doing final checks. We are going to be doing something a little less different tonight. Um, in that we are opening up the lines if somebody wants to call in and share an opinion. I will ask that if you're going to do so, you don't have to agree with us. We don't ask you to do that, but we do ask that you be respectful, which I think is easy enough for everyone to do, even if you think we're both idiots and hate everything we have to say about everything of all time. But there you go. You will need Zoom to be able to join us. Other than that, we are off to the races, ladies and gentlemen. This is oh no wait, we're not off to the races. I need to post this to Facebook. Um, But for those of you who do not know, earlier this month, we hit 10 years since I first started this wacky channel here on YouTube. So tonight we were having a 10-year anniversary special, even though it was actually like September 3rd. Because yeah, somebody lost track of time. I blame Brian. We had wanting to reach out to like past guests and things like that and invite them to join us. Unfortunately, YouTube is not, or not YouTube, Facebook isn't quite cooperating, so that didn't work out so well. Um, I've done what I could. If anyone, and I will be putting, I just put, and I will, if necessary, repost the Zoom link in the chat. If anyone would like to join us, they are free to do so. If you don't want to join us, you don't have to. Um, But in the meantime, one more post and we're good to go, ladies and gentlemen. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to tonight's episode of Paranormal Encyclopedia. I apologize for the fact it's been a little while since we've done an episode. Um, Being an adult keeps us busy. I'm not a fan of the idea either, but apparently we have to be grown-ups occasionally. Um, for those of you who haven't seen us before, welcome. My name is Samantha Mears. I've recently come out as transgender. Um, she, her, but I'll answer just about anything else you want to call me. Just don't call me late for dinner, as Grandpa used to say. We're a talk show about the paranormal, particularly demonology. I'm joined, of course, by my co-host.
I'm Brian McKinley. I am an author of four vampire novels, uh, sometimes known as the godfather of vampire thrillers, although that is a somewhat disputed claim.
And the people who disputed are wrong. You are the godfather of vampire thrillers.
Yeah, at
Um,
least in my own mind. But I'm
and
Kevin,
mine.
co-host for several years now, kind of the skeptic to the believer.
You are the Scully to my Mulder.
Yes, the Scully.
Which is ironic given I'm the one who became out as trans. Um, but it has been a really fun ride. And I think for tonight, aside from if we happen to get any guests, we'll just do a little bit of a retrospective, talk about some of the guests we've had, some of the adventures and misadventures, favorite topics, things like that.
Hmm.
Um, so why don't I start with the most loaded of loaded questions? If you had to pick, gun to your head, if you had to pick one, who was your favorite guest that we've had?
Oh, let's see. I could I could go really easy and say my favorite guest was when I was the guest being interviewed. That would be simple. But no, really I would say I had the most fun with Jonathan Mayberry.
For me, it's a
I had
toss
him a
up.
couple of times.
Yep. I love all of the guests that we've had. They are wonderful people. They are part of why the show has lasted 10 years, as are you, Brian. Brian, honestly, without you, and I want to give credit to the past as well, without Drew Rosansky, my first co-host, without Chris, or AKA Baron Voltage, who used to co-host with the two of us, without yourself, particularly, since you're the one that's still here, without Beth, and of course, without my fiance, Misha, I wouldn't be sitting here at 10 years. It's been a very long, hard road, and sometimes there have been days where I just get up and it's like, why am I still doing this? Um, but this show, anything that is great about it is because of those who have supported me, like my co-hosts are all previously mentioned, or my guests. I love all of my guests. If I have to pick, it would either be Jonathan Mayberry or Dacre Stoker.
Hmm. Yeah, Dacre was also really cool. I mean,
Yeah.
everybody's been really cool.
Yeah.
It's very hard to pick, you know,
That's
best.
why I said gun to your head. It's like you have to pick somebody.
Yeah.
But
I mean, maybe it's because Jonathan Mayberry is kind of fresh in my mind. So,
yeah,
we had some interesting guests back in the radio show days as well that I'm probably not remembering quite off the top of my head, but
yeah, and I want to start. I mean, we need to. I want to start getting back to doing it every week, even when I don't feel like it. Because usually it's I don't feel well, but even if I don't feel well, get up, do at least half an hour, get something on the air, and I want to start reaching out to more guests and um all of our previous guests. I mean, I invited everybody a little last minute because of issues I was having with Facebook. That's on me. Um, I'd like them to come back. There's some new folks I've read books by or seen videos from that I'd like to see come on as well. I've tried reaching out to him once. I want to reach out to him again. There's a gentleman by the name of oh, now I keep forgetting his name. Um, Irving Finkel, who's a curator at the British Museum and an expert in cuneiform. He wrote a wonderful book called First Ghosts about some of the oldest ghost stories in the human record, the ones from like Babylon and Sumer, and the very first civilizations, the first written forms of writing. He's an as I understand it, he's an atheist, but he has a very humor. I mean, I would highly recommend the book. It's his style is very humorous. It is a very scholarly work insofar as it presents the information as it is. He's not passing judgment on things, which I respect. But there's also a high degree of humor, and it's highly accessible if you're the average person who doesn't want to read the stuffy, we're not, if you're not in college anymore, you don't want to read stuffy academic texts. It's still a great work. Um, and there's some other folks I'd like to reach out to. If anybody listening knows somebody cool or is somebody interesting that wants to come on, you're also more than welcome. I mean, hey, there's a link in the chat. You can join us tonight if you like. Um, I would say the only guest I didn't care for is the episode that only aired once and never appeared again, which is the psychic that we had on one time.
oh yeah. Yeah, I remember that. You didn't have much patience
I
with her.
don't have much patience with any psychic, to be completely honest. I don't mean to disrespect any folks listening that consider themselves psychic. Some of you may very well be. Some I do believe psychic phenomenon exists, but a long time in radio has left me very skeptical. I'm sorry to say. Keep in mind, aside from the fact I've spent 10 years a year on YouTube, before that I was on radio for actual physical traditional radio for 10 years. I've talked to a lot of psychics. There's another subject we need to cover that happened just this week. For anyone who is unaware, as of September 24th, we have survived not one, but two apocalypses again.
And the rapture.
Well, yeah, I'm including the rapture within the apocalypse
Okay.
umbrella. Supposedly the rapture was going to happen September 23rd or September 24th. Obviously, there's at least two possibilities here. One possibility is they were wrong again, which I can honestly believe from many years of experience with the fact they've been predicting the end of the world literally since Jesus was still on the planet, probably longer,
Mhm.
and we're still here. The other possibility Well, I think less likely, I think is also, at least within the realm of possibility, is that Jesus did come back for a rapture, looked around and went, no, and left everyone here because he didn't want it,
Yeah,
anyone.
nobody made the cut.
Yeah. And
That's a
I'm not trying to get
possibility.
too political with that because keep in mind, I consider myself a Christian. If I'm saying nobody made the cut, I mean me too. I'm not just saying all the right winger Christians didn't make the cut. I'm saying no one did. Um, and I think that's the best explanation. There's a story I read years ago where a group of like paranormal investigators and theologians and things like that got together and came to the conclusion the world already ended. Nobody cared. And that's why it's like, in the 60s, we went to the moon. In the 80s, we invented, they invented or excuse me, in the 80s, what Al Gore invented the internet. And yes, I know Al Gore, not only did Al Gore not invent the internet, Al Gore never claimed he invented the internet. It's a joke. And now it's like, where's our flying cars, people?
Yeah, been promised those for like 70 years.
Yeah. Yeah, we have no flying cars. We no have no vacations on the moon. All the amazing things we were supposed to get were promised aren't coming to pass. So we've been whatever you think of the political situation. We're not a political commentary show after all. The world has not quite progressed the way many people have hoped. So the author's thesis, and it was a fictional short story, not an actual theory, was that the world ended and nobody cared enough to notice.
Mhm.
Um, I don't think that's the case. The reality is, Jesus himself said, "No man, not the angels, not even Jesus himself, only God the Father knows when the end will come." So anyone who tells you, "I figured it out, this is it, the world is coming to an end," is saying that Jesus is wrong. And if you're not Christian, okay, you're not a follower of Jesus. You're not subject to his statements. If you're a Christian, though, you're kind of making a mistake. And keep in mind, people have been convinced. You think, there was back in 2011 a guy by the name of Harold Camping famously was convinced that the world was coming to an end. And people try to tie it to that whole nonsense about the Mayan calendar, the world coming to an end because of that, which of course also didn't happen. See, it's not just Christians who get it wrong. But he's like, no, no, this is the Bible. The Mayan thing's just a coincidence. But he predicted it in 2011. He predicted it again, and then he finally gave up and admitted he couldn't figure it out. And that's a big deal, and that made big news. And people think of that as a big failure. Folks, that was amateur hour. Let me get the exact date. Have you ever heard of the Great Disappointment, Brian?
Yeah, I believe so. I remember years ago, I think
I
we
think we
did an
meant, yeah,
episode on the apocalypse or the end of the world and all that.
we did. We have done. I think we've done it more than once, even. But
I know
in the
we talked
19th,
through it at least
yeah,
once. Yeah.
in the 19th century, a Baptist preacher by the name of William Millard proclaimed Jesus Christ would return to Earth by 1844. He called it the Second Advent. He claimed his study of the prophecy in Daniel 8 during the Second Great Awakening led him to conclude that Daniel's cleansing of the sanctuary was cleansing the world from sin when Christ would come, and he and many others prepared. Um, on October 22nd, 1844, he and his followers were deeply disappointed. And keep in mind, the stories, and there's debate about how much truth there is to this, have people sitting on the roofs of their houses, gathering in stadiums, convinced the world was coming to an end on this day. And they had a lot of egg on their face. They got a lot of criticism. Obviously, I don't approve, but the reality is they even got some threats of violence. But there were two main split offs from this point. One group of people came to the conclusion that Miller was right in the theory, but his math was wrong. And they split off and eventually became a sect known as the Seventh day Adventists, which still exists to this day. Another group of people um, were going to create another group that said, well, okay, something did happen that day, but it happened invisibly, not in the visible world. It happened in the spirit world. So what was that and what does it mean? And that was Christ's, I believe, if memory serves, I haven't looked and reread their beliefs exactly. But basically, that Christ did come back and started to set up his one true church. And those people would go on to become the Jehovah's Witnesses,
Hmm.
who would go on to predict the end of the world at least 4 or 5 more times, the last time being in 1975. And obviously, I was born in 1976, so obviously the world's still here.
Yep.
Um, and there's a whole other thing, and there's guests I want to get on the show about this as well. But there's more than one view of the Book of Revelations, and it's worth noting the rapture is not in the Bible. It is based on one verse in the Bible that tells us that God will call the living or Jesus specifically will call the living and the dead who will meet him in the clouds, which can be interpreted a lot of different ways. And that's where in the 19th century, one preacher came up with this idea of the rapture. The term isn't there. All the details you hear about aren't there. It is a 19th century interpretation of scripture. Um, but there's another view. There are what they call millennialists and premillennialists and postmillennialists, all who argue about when the world will end, when the rapture will come. There's another view which I increasingly subscribe to, which is called Peterism. Peterism suggests that the Book of Revelation not only is not prophecy, it was never meant to be. That what it actually is it's the history of the Christian Church of the first century with a whole bunch of symbolism and poetic language to hide what's going on from Roman authorities like um, Tiberius or Nero or Caligula, who famously mass murdered Christians. And there's a number of things that point to that, the biggest of which being that the Bible, of course, famously tells us that the beast, the beast, and the number of the beast is 666 or 616, depending on your translation. And the thing is, if you work out the name of Nero Caesar in Hebrew and then pump it through what's called gematria, which is Jewish numerology, guess what it equals? Brian, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay.
I
Here,
I was
say
assuming you were speaking rhetorically.
no. I was slightly concerned about my volume, so I wanted to double check everything was still working. But
Oh
yeah,
yeah.
his name would be 666 in Jewish numerology of the time.
Hmm.
And the symbol is a mark on the hand or the forehead. Look at a Roman coin from the first century. Nero's name, which 666 is a reference to, is on the coin. It's talking about the coin, without which in the Roman Empire you could neither buy nor sell, but you also had to worship the image of the man on the coin, because remember, in Roman society, the emperor is divine.
No, it became that way after a while.
But by the time of certainly
Thanks to
Nero,
guys like Caligula
yeah,
and Nero.
and we're talking about this is coming in, Revelation was written relatively late at the end of the first century, beginning of the second. So we would be talking about during or after those times when
Yeah,
those guys, not the deification of the emperor had already become an established thing.
yeah.
Um, is this the one true? I am not a biblical scholar. I'm hoping to get one or two on. Um, but I think this is a pretty good interpretation of what Revelation is actually talking about. I would highly recommend that anyone who wants more information about this from an actual biblical scholar who's probably forgotten more about the subject than I'm going to know in my lifetime, look up Dr. Dan McClellan here on YouTube. He has a wonderful video series about trying to demystify um, theology and Christian history and what the Bible actually means for the average person, not just he's trying to make biblical scholarship more relatable to the rest of us, and I think that's a really worthwhile goal. He's also a published author. He's done peer-reviewed art, journal articles and things like that. He knows what he's doing. Um, and I agree with him on a great deal. I will say that as well. Um, he's also written some good books, but we're moving off topic again. So, of all the topics we've covered so far, Brian, do you have any favorites other than the obvious of vampires?
Well, that would be my obvious one. All the topics that we've done that touched on, types of vampires or
Mm-hmm.
vampire authors, things like that. Books like Carmilla and
Oh yeah,
Dracula. I've enjoyed doing all of those immensely and
so
talking
have I, to
to
be
people.
honest. But it's such an. I mean, you're right. Vampire fiction. You saying vampires are your favorite topic is like me saying I like talking about demons. It's what I do.
Yeah.
you know, and there's
Well,
nothing
what do
wrong
you
with
think
that for either of
what are
us.
your favorite topics on
I'm
after
going to restrict
all this
myself
time?
both from saying vampires because I love vampires just like you do, and from saying demons because I talk about demons all the bloody time as well. Um, Fairies is always a fun one to me,
Hmm.
just because it's just such a weird branch of the spirit world.
Yeah, it
Um,
feels like we've never really been able to get that deep into it because neither of us is really an
we need to
expert
find
on.
somebody who knows a lot more about fairy folklore than either of us.
Yeah, that would be a really cool thing to do. I think we that'd be good.
But I think it's a really neat and fun topic. It's one I want to dig more into. I'll say I just thought of a new topic that we've never really covered either that might be an interesting thing to swing through. Psychic vampirism.
Yeah,
People who consider themselves psychic vampires, people, who have been attacked by psychic vampires, what psychic vampirism is, and the always interesting question of, okay, believing in the Walking Dead vampire version is a little challenging, but it's like, do you believe in psychic vampires? And I would argue that not only do I believe in psychic vampires, but there's at least a way of looking at the idea of a psychic vampire that is entirely real and doesn't require any belief in the paranormal at all.
hmm.
Because it isn't a paranormal thing, it's an understood cycle. There's just some people that almost even deliberately and knowingly will drain the energy out of a room. Not in a spiritual magic sense. I mean,
Yeah.
just that social energy that we all feel and have.
There's a whole character based around that in What We Do in the Shadows.
Yes, I know.
Great, great show.
Brilliant show. I need to watch the rest of it. But there is that idea of, we all know those kinds of people or have met those kinds of people at some point in our lives that
Hmm.
you spend an hour with the person, feel like you ran on a treadmill for 8 hours or something. It's just
Yes.
exhausting. And again, I'm not attributing this to something paranormal. I think there are times when this is a spirit is a psychic phenomenon, but it can also be a purely psychological effect too, and it is
Oh
something
yeah.
most of
I
us
mean,
experience.
that's something that occurs around narcissists.
Yes, narcissists
They
are a common example of this.
they tend to, yeah, I think that's very reasonable. If you want to do a thing where we talk about psychic vampires, there's a number of people in like the Iron Garden that we could probably try to get as a guest and discuss the phenomenon in more detail.
Do you happen to know if there are any people that consider themselves psychic vampires that might consent to an
Hmm.
interview? I'd be
I
happy to
know a
have them.
few. I know a few do, and I know there have been some that do presentations on psychic vampirism.
And I know there's a branch of it that is non-invasive. I mean, it's done with consent and things like that, I believe.
Yeah,
So it's not necessarily evil. I would have some, I would apply the same rules I have for everyone to them coming on. If you can be respectful, you're welcome on my show. And I
yeah.
think,
No, and most of them are really
yeah.
fine people. So
And I've been around the Iron Garden enough that I'm willing to extend the invitation and say, hey, if you want to come on, you are welcome on my show because I think that you will carry yourself in a respectful and appropriate manner, which is the same I would expect from any other guest I have on. And I'm not trying to single anybody out by saying it that way.
yeah,
I wouldn't necessarily open it to anyone anywhere in the world who makes that claim because some of them are narcissistic nut jobs. But there are many people, fine, like you said, they're fine people that see it this way.
yeah.
So if you want to reach out, yes, please, they're welcome
I
on my
can I
show.
can do that.
Heck, I will say this now, and I've said this in the past. I am perfectly willing to have a Satanist on the show if they want to appear. And I mean that in all of the possible senses. If somebody from the Satanic Church that Anton LaVey started wants to come on, I'll give them the airtime. If somebody from the Satanic Temple wants to do it, I give them airtime too. If an actual dyed in the wool self-described devil worshiper wants to come on, as long as they agree to remain respectful and aren't start casting spells on the show or something, they're still welcome on my show. I and there are Christians I would not invite on my show. So this is when I say respectful, this is not a religious matter. You don't have to agree with my religion. You just have to be able to talk like an adult.
Yeah,
And there are many Satanists that can do that, and those people are welcome here. There are many Christians who cannot, and those people are not welcome here.
sure.
But which I suppose is an interesting question I've toyed with covering sometime. So I know of at least a couple, but I want to see from you. Are there any subjects that you would actually return down as subtopics for the show?
Hmm.
I can think of three, and really
Oh,
only one side of one of the three,
yeah.
or actually one side of all three. No, that's not
Yeah.
true. One I wouldn't touch with a 10-foot pole in any direction. How about you, though? You first.
I'm probably open. I mean, when you mention yours, that might trigger.
I suspect you'll agree with at least two of them.
Yeah. So, but I'm not. It's not occurring to me. There are things that I've thought are sort of outside of the bounds
Well,
of
yeah,
what this show is. So I don't. I've never brought them up or thought about suggesting them.
which
But
is also it is different than what I mean. That's absolutely
yeah,
fair. Talking about our last D&D session, for example, would not be appropriate to the topic. Although Dungeons and Dragons as a whole arguably could be,
yeah, we
if
might
only
get
because
more
of the satanic
views.
panics. What?
I said we might get more views.
Yeah, this is true.
There's a
But
market for D&D videos out there.
this is true. And we have actually had a D&D YouTuber on in the past.
Mm,
Guy from the show How to Be a Great Game Master was kind enough to come on at my fiance's suggestion. And I'll admit, and I wouldn't mind having him on again, because the thing is, when originally she suggested him and scheduled him, I'm like, this isn't going to work. Not because I don't like and respect his channel. His channel is wonderful. 10 out of 10. If you're into gaming, go check him out. But it's like, what are we going to talk to a guy who just talks about running role playing games? I mean,
yeah,
there didn't seem to be a lot of overlap in that topic, and he wound up being a really good interview, in my
yeah,
opinion. He's a good guy, and I'd have him on again. Other than the psychic, there's literally no one that's ever been on this show I wouldn't invite back. So the three subjects I will not cover. Two of which it's from a specific angle I won't touch them. One of which I won't touch from any angle. And I think it'll be fairly obvious why. I will never have someone on this show who takes the idea of ancient aliens seriously. I find the idea, as I've talked about before, I personally find the idea offensive. Specifically, the reason is because most ancient aliens people, and if you find me a good, sound, rational person who doesn't fall into this trap, I might make an exception for it. But the typical thing you find if you listen to people who think that aliens helped the ancient people build things, they only ever helped the ancient non-European people build things. They
Hmm.
will go on for hours about how aliens built the pyramids or drew the lines of Nazca. You never hear, except for occasionally Stonehenge. They never talk about the crazy things the ancient European cultures did, some of which is quite nuts and done by like Paleolithic cultures that shouldn't have been any more. I mean, heck, the Karanis giant in England was created around the time of the Aztec Empire, which actually isn't that long ago, believe it or not. But the Aztecs built these pyramids, and that was amazing and a feat of marvel and must have been done by aliens. This giant, which could only be seen from a distance or from space, from the air because of how huge it is. Oh no, that was just done by humans because it
Yeah,
was done by
I
white.
think it would be interesting to I could see doing that topic, but if it was done from an educational
Yeah,
point
yeah.
of view where all of the different angles were talked about.
See that's why I say it's from a very specific viewpoint. If we could get an archaeologist, and there's a guy I reached out to ages back that I wouldn't mind reaching out to again, who has a wonderful channel called Mini Minuteman that I highly recommend
Hmm.
as well. But somebody from that perspective, and even somebody who presented it from an academic, all sides of the question type of point of view
Yeah.
without dismissing it the way I do, I'll take. What I won't take is an outright believer, particularly one who's like only white people invented things.
Yeah,
Um,
I
because
could
I
see
don't
that.
we don't promote racism. That's the problem there. The second group, and this is absolute hard and fast. One side of this group I will never tolerate on my show, even as a debate, are people who claim the Holocaust didn't happen.
Oh yeah.
Because
Yeah,
screw that
I
BS.
would agree with that. I'm not gonna entertain stuff like
You know,
that.
an actual historian who's going to present factual evidence of the Holocaust as a counter to deniers is welcome on the show, although not a high priority guess just because we're not primarily a history show. It's not a very paranormal topic.
Yeah.
But it's what I'm willing to entertain, particularly because of the fact that it's conspiracy theory and the paranormal directly overlap. And then there is the third that no, under no circumstances, not even to talk about the evidence for why it's silly to say so. I swore the day we started this show, I will continue the day that we today it ends. We will not give airtime to flat earthers. That subject, in my opinion, most flat earthers are trolls. And the ones who aren't are too stupid to be worth my time.
Hmm.
And
Yeah, I
while I
think
respect,
that's fair.
and there are a number of wonderful channels out there like Simon Dan or what's the other guy who I could Professor Dave, you know, Cosmic Skeptic, people like that who do great videos about why the world isn't flat. And I have all the respect in the world for the people who do those videos because they understand the science of it far better than I ever will.
Yeah.
But it is too stupid of a topic. I'm not even willing to entertain it to talk about why it's stupid. This is the most you'll ever hear me talk about flat Earth on this channel. Evolution, if somebody wanted to come on, we've done it before. Even, we had the great guy from How Creationism Taught Me Real Science on. Have him on again. Have somebody else talk evolution again. Absolutely, but flat Earth isn't worth the time, and that's all there is to that. So, what do you think, Brian? What do you think of my suggested topics?
I, I
Of no.
I'm pretty much in agreement. Like I said.
Yeah, I figured.
Yeah, I don't see a lot of benefit to doing those or exploring those deeply
Yeah.
as topics.
Just about anything that's legitimately paranormal I can think of, I'd consider. I'd even have another psychic on the show.
Well, or even just
Oh,
somebody that believes that aliens at some point in history visited the
Yeah,
Earth, and there might be
that's a
evidence
different
of
thing.
that. Not that they helped build the pyramids or any of that crap, but
Yeah, you know
just the
that
ancient astronaut theory.
uh, that I think is a really good point. So I should correct what I said because I'm not going to say I'm clarifying it. I didn't think of it that way. Brian has a valid point. I'm going to give way to Brian's good point here. If we had somebody who wants to talk about some of the pictographic carvings that look like they might be spaceships or aliens, I've seen the artwork in question and I do not agree. But that can be done in such a way that I would allow someone who wanted to take an academic approach, an intellectual approach and talk about that. I'd have them on the air to talk about it. Because there's meat
Interesting.
there that I don't think is insultingly stupid that I would certainly give to airtime to. Um, and Drew, my first co-host, and I have talked about that in the past because there is a great question, and I think I know your answer to this, but it's also always fun to chat about. Is there intelligent life elsewhere in the universe?
Somewhere in the universe, yeah, I would say the probability is just high enough because of the number of stars and planets that somewhere out there life evolved that can think.
And I agree with you. And that's one thing I've heard more than once that is people when I say I don't believe that aliens have come to Earth. And to be clear, I don't believe aliens have ever been to Earth, or if they have, I don't think they come back regularly. And I'll get into why in a second. That is not. They think that means I don't believe that alien life exists in the universe. But here's the thing, and here's where I say I don't think it's been here, or that if it has, it comes back with frequency. The nearest star to Earth, other than our own, other than Sol, is 4.4 light years away, which means at the astoundingly fast speed of half the speed of light, and it would take over 8 years to go from that planet to this planet, and another 8 years to go back. We have trouble getting the technology and making effort to make the trip to Mars. And as far as we know, traveling at the speed of light, let alone beyond the speed of light, because remember, at the speed of light, it takes 4 years each way to make that journey,
Hmm.
is impossible. Now, people will argue, and I'm not saying they're wrong, that there are at least theoretical ways to get around that problem with wormholes or warp drives or things of that nature. But we haven't seen a working model. That doesn't mean it's impossible, but I need more evidence to convince me that anyone has come from out there to here. Um, Also, more importantly than that, to the question though, well, I absolutely agree that there's almost certainly intelligent life somewhere in the universe other than Earth. Heck, this point, I'd almost settle for intelligent life on Earth. It's not. I don't think it's very close by. Because keep in mind, there could be an entire civilization as advanced as you see in Star Wars. Because Star Wars faster than light travel is substantially faster than Star Trek. Well, that whole civilization could exist right now in the Andromeda Galaxy, and we'd have no idea it was there. They would have no idea that we're here because there is so much distance between those points that even radio signals that have been could have been traveling for thousands of years wouldn't be here yet because nothing signals can't travel in light faster light necessarily either. So even something well, something 100 light years away, traveling twice the speed of light is a 50-year trip each way. I don't think, and the fact that while we've been looking for decades, we have never found evidence of life elsewhere in the universe, intelligent life elsewhere in the universe. Absence of evidence is not and never can be evidence of absence. But again, I think it's a good reason to think that any life near us, and there may be life near us, and to be clear, there may even be fairly intelligent life near us. Because keep in mind, human life existed on this planet for 10. I just thought that a new discovery suggests there may have been humans on Earth 400,000 years ago. But to even somebody a light year away from us, we've only been sending signals they could pick up for the last 200 years or so.
Yeah.
So there could, for all we know, Proxima Centauri, that closest star to Earth, might have a highly advanced civilization at the point of the European Renaissance, and we have no idea it existed. And vice versa, because they wouldn't be sending out any kind of signal that we could detect, nor would they have a way to detect the signals that come out from Earth.
Hmm.
And that is not a primitive life form. That's highly advanced. That's human life, level intelligence life. It's just technologically not where it needs to be.
Yeah.
And I could be wrong. Because again, the fact we've never found a signal doesn't mean the signal isn't there or being blocked. But as it stands, I'm skeptical that life is local. And also, realistically, think about this. The universe is roughly 13.8 billion years old. If a highly advanced civilization swung by the solar system 5 billion years ago, the planet wasn't even here, let alone any intelligent life. And if you flew out, say, 100,000 light years from your own planet, let's just say that was possible, and found, okay, this one star doesn't even has no habitable, no planets directly within the habitable Goldilocks zone, and no signs of intelligent life. You get back home, and there's an infinite number of stars in the galaxy. Are you going to rush back here a couple billion years later to check this planet, or are you going to keep checking all the other ones?
Hmm.
You might. I mean, in fairness, you might. And maybe somebody swung by before there was any intelligent life on this planet, and it'll be back tomorrow or next year. I don't know. But I think there's an excellent possibility that if there wasn't highly advanced life, like more advanced than we are, that could get here, that's another possibility as well. For all we know, there was a highly advanced civilization that spanned the entire Milky Way galaxy and fought some galactic war a billion years ago and wiped itself out before the first human life evolved on planet Earth. And until we get to another planet where this giant empire existed, we wouldn't know. A friend of mine who sadly is not with us anymore, C.J. Henderson, a friend of yours as well, Brian, and a friend of many other guests we've had on over the years, wrote a book I keep meaning to read called um everyone like all, everything but the monkeys or something to that effect, which is set in or just us monkeys. I think that might have been it, just us monkeys. At any rate, it's a book about a universe where humanity goes out into space and finds out we're the only intelligent species left. It's not that advanced life didn't exist; it's that it's died off, and we're all that's out there. And yes, Lord Ruin, I'm on about aliens. But welcome, Lord Ruin, to our 10-year anniversary.
Oh,
We have
good.
been on YouTube for 10 years. And I want to say you've been listening a lot of that time. Um, that post you see in the chat is the link if you'd like to join the Zoom call. This one, we are opening that up to anyone who wants to join us. If you don't, that's cool too. But thank you for coming and thank you for listening for all these years. We appreciate it. We love and appreciate all of our listeners.
All 10 of them.
Well, we have 788 subscribers. And I do see new subscribers get added every once in a while.
Yeah. I'd like to see that many views, though. That would be great.
Oh, I'd love that many views. Thank you for the 10 years, Lord Ruin. And if memory serves, yeah, for that matter, Lord Ruin is an old timer like me. He used to listen to the Blue Gentili show when we were on the air.
Hmm.
Actually, that's something else I think I want to do with tonight, given we're coming up on the end of an hour. I want to take a minute, a moment of silence, if you will, and remember both Lou Gentili, Ed Warren, Lorraine Warren, and Father Joseph Prose, who were my yeah, Father Joe and Lou were my mentors. Ed was I only met Ed twice, so I can't call him a mentor, but he was definitely an inspiration. And without those people, my life would have gone in a very different direction, and we probably wouldn't be sitting here right now. So let's just take a quick second to remember them. Thanks, guys. I appreciate all the help you've given me over the years to get to here, and I hope you're resting well on the other side. Um, and I look forward to the day we'll see you again. Amen. Let's see what else to look at. See, how about you, Brian? Can you think of any goofy topics we should cover that we haven't?
Oh, that's the question we ask every week when we're trying to come up with new topics.
This is true.
I'm always trying to think of something that we haven't
We're
done.
always saying we should write the ideas down when we have them, and we never do.
Yeah. Well, we've gotten to a lot of them. I mean, there's some that go
True.
back like 7 years or whatever on YouTube, but we did them.
And if we
We
haven't
could
done it
redo.
in 7 years, we can cover it again.
Yeah,
Um,
there's some we could
there,
redo.
there's something we could redo there, and there are definitely things. Yes, and to quote my friend Lord Ruin, "Amen." And God bless Lou, the man that Satan loved to hate. For those of you who aren't old timers like Ruin and I, one of Lou's taglines back on the radio show days was "the man that Satan loves to hate." Um, as well as being the king of paranormal controversy, the king of UEP. Um, Lou is a character, and you can still find it if you look up Lou Gentili here on YouTube. You can still find a couple of recordings of us on the radio back in the day. For that matter, recordings of the Amityville Horror Week we did are still up. Um, Actually, there we go for it. One heck of a topic we've never sat down to talk about. We need to do a show about Amityville, the single most famous haunting in U.S. history.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, we could go through that and
Yeah.
some of the Conjuring movies, and
Oh
you could
yes, 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 yes.
you could talk about the reality, the real cases behind the movies.
Laura Ruin, that's an excellent question. He asked if there are any archives of his show are still around. I wish I could tell you, man. I know there's a few recordings still here on YouTube, particularly the Amityville week, and his wife should have other ones. But at this point, his wife is not in the game, as it were. So I'm just respecting her privacy on that kind of thing. But if anyone happens to know of archives of the Lou Gentili show out there, please let me know. I would love to link so that people could check it out. Lou was quite a character, as Ruin can attest to. And he's sorely missed. But yeah, we could talk Amityville. We could talk the Conjuring movies. The last movie in the series just came out. I have seen it twice, in fact, because I was planning on a retrospective on the entire series. In fact, maybe the two of us should sit down and watch the series and do it together.
Hmm.
And I have to say, I thought the third movie made it. The fourth is the fifth movie now. I think Last Rites, the Conjuring movies, made an ugly mess of both the end of Ed and Lorraine's career, and for that matter, it made an ugly mess of the Smurl haunting, which is the one that the movie focus on. Um, Folks, I hate to do this, but I'll say honestly, and we'll do a more thorough, thought out version of talk about the movies soon. But I do not recommend going to see Conjuring: The Last Rites. I don't think it's worth your time and money. Um, if you're interested in the Smurl haunting, which is the haunting that it is based on, type into your Yahoo YouTube search bar "The Haunted." is a TV movie from the 1980s that does far more justice to what actually happened. Up to and including insert. I mean, I have the utmost respect for Tony Spera. Tony Spera was Ed and Lorraine's son-in-law, married their daughter, took over the work from them as Ed passed away. Um, but they were not involved in the case the movie is based on, but they turned out into a major part of the movie. And a member of the Smurl family has even commented that that was not something they liked. That is an excellent question. Lurwin asks, "What percentage of paranormal activities do we think are real, and how many do I think are imagined to due to mental health issues?" I want to say this first. While it is absolutely true that people imagine all sorts of paranormal phenomenon due to schizophrenia, dissociative identity disorder, epilepsy, and other psychological conditions, I don't think the majority of people who think they are experiencing a haunting have a mental health issue. That isn't to say I think the majority of them are true, because here's something that happens to almost all of us at one time or another. It's happened to me. I will admit it. It's late at night. You can't sleep. You just watched a really scary movie on Netflix or listened to one of our videos, and you hear the floor creak in a weird way. And it sounds like somebody's walking around outside your bedroom, or like there's something hiding in your closet. And that feeling of being watched. And it can be creepy and it can be terrifying. But it doesn't mean that you have a spirit, because houses settle, and it is a fact that piles of clothes and things like that can play tricks on your mind at night, especially at night in the dark. So I think a lot of times when people think their house is haunted, there's a natural explanation for what's going on. They're not mentally ill. There's a problem with their plumbing. There is extremely low frequency in the house that's causing hallucinations. Their brain is misfiring in a weird way. Because keep in mind, people occasionally just that do not have any diagnosable mental illness, occasionally will hallucinate just because the wrong neurotransmitter gets released at the wrong time because it's a day ending in Y, and they see weird things. They're not crazy. It's just the way the brain chemistry sometimes plays out in all of us. And about 30% of the population experiences sleep paralysis at least once in their life without suffering from a sleeping disorder. So weird things happen that the person experiencing it can't explain, that aren't paranormal, but aren't necessarily mental illness either. And sometimes and yes, plenty of times it is mental illness, or it's a combination of the two. Or for that matter, just because somebody's mentally ill doesn't mean they don't have a ghost. Um, but I would, and I'm probably being conservative, but I'd say probably 60 to 70% of cases have a natural explanation. And of the remaining 30%, I'd argue 90% of them are ghosts. Lord Ruin asked an excellent question as well, which is, what is my opinion of DMT entities? And I feel guilty because I was given the subject to do some research on, and I'll just be honest and say I haven't done it yet. And since I know almost nothing about it, I mean, I've gotten a message a while back with more information than I already knew, but I need to sit down and do proper research before I comment on that topic. I mean, you were around at the time. Any chance you did any research on it, Brian?
Oh no.
Brian? Oh, yeah, I didn't think
No.
so.
No, I forgot about that entirely. I know you were going to do something, and I
Yeah.
just assumed
And I'm
it
not blaming you for
once
not
you get
doing it
it
because
would
I
be
was
the
supposed to do
topic.
it myself.
Yeah. I figured
And
once
I
you
didn't.
announced it as the topic, I'd look it up and
Okay. Okay, let's announce it. We're going to talk about DMT entities next week. So, Brian, you and I now have the homework assignment of doing some research so we can get something of an informed opinion on the subject. I think that's fair, given this is at least the third or fourth time somebody's asked.
what are DMTs?
I don't know. That tells you how little I know about this subject.
No.
Let, let me look. Have been dimethyltryptamine. Um, okay. So it's a dimethyltryptamine, which is the DMT in this, is a drug. Um, and to be clear, as I am reading off of the Wikipedia real quick. So if I screw anything up, blame the fact this is 10 seconds of research on Wikipedia. But basically, it looks like it's a drug derived from a number of plants. Um, so it's also known as the DMT, known as the businessman trip during the 1960s in the United States. Its user could have a full psychedelic experience in less time than with other substances like LSD or placebo and mushrooms. So basically, as I understand it, and Lord Ruin or anyone else who is better informed than I am, feel free to call me on my bullshit if I'm wrong. But as I understand it, DMT is essentially a hallucinogenic compound. So we are talking about beings perceived while people are inebriated on DMT. Also, sometimes apparently, uh, they're called the machine. The term is machine elf. It was coined by Terence McKenna, who's an ethnobotanicist, for entities that he encountered in what's referred to as DMT hyperspace. Also, terms like fractal elves or self-transforming EMT elves. But they're beings that people encounter during a psychedelic state. So
Okay.
I will say off the cuff, again with the proviso if I have not done a great deal of research into this, so I'm not absolutely giving a definitive opinion. Just saying what I think based on a cursory examination. Um, because Lord Ruin adds that they see these machine elves and describe them in the same way. My instinct is still to suggest that it's probably. I'm very skeptical when it comes to psychedelic experience being legitimately spiritual. That said, I don't want to disrespect other people's experiences, particularly because we're also treading dangerously close to cultural experiences, given the use of hallucinogenic compounds during spiritual practices has been going on among the Native Americans for thousands of years. And I'm
Yeah.
not going to condemn an entire culture's practices based on a limited understanding. I've never had the experience myself, but I am skeptical. But again, it's possible. Um, I need to do more research to really give a definitive answer. If people are all seeing these things the same way and there's consistent descriptions, I may very easily be wrong. And I won't disrespect other people by completely dismissing them without doing more research. But
Yeah,
that's
this is
my,
the first I've heard of this.
yeah, well, first since the last time somebody brought it up, but we didn't even look that far into it last time.
Yeah.
It certainly seems like an interesting question. And I think there's a whole series of topics that branch off of there that we haven't really got into yet. We should
Hmm.
about, and actually a type of guest we should look into because it seems very interesting that I've only recently been reading about. Um, but there is a whole series of experiences people have with the paranormal during altered states. Sometimes meditation, hypnosis, um, you know, dream sleep, psychoactive drugs.
Hmm.
And there are enough commonalities that there's certainly something there to discuss whether or not there's a legitimate paranormal phenomenon going on. So maybe this could be a good branching off point, a whole series of new topics we've never really gone into before. Again, I'm very leery about talking about this kind of subject because the only time I've had things I knew for certain were hallucinations were as a side effect of taking sleeping medication that didn't make me sleep, but it did make me see crazy things.
Hmm.
But I don't think that was paranormal. I think that was I'm on a sleep medication and that hallucinations are a common side effect of sleep medication. Particularly the most disturbing the things I remember, and I want to say it was on Ambien, but I may, or generic Ambien even, and I may be wrong, were one, laying on my bed with the lights on and looking up and almost being like the floor of my room or the ceiling of my room was half transparent and I could see people moving around inside. For lack of an easier way to explain it, the experience was almost like I was getting a foggy view of a basketball court. But not like I was looking up through the floor of a basketball court, but I was looking through a wall into a basketball court.
Hmm.
Um, the other one, which was also funny, because I got tired of that, and the other thing I'll get to in a minute, because the last thing's kind of was extremely creepy, is I went up to my living room where I had a toy statue of Cthulhu. It was about yay tall. And I'm sitting on my couch, staring at my computer, and then occasionally looking over it, chatting with a friend of mine, and looking at it over at Cthulhu. And his wings start to flap, his tail starts to swish back and forth. The bookshelf he's sitting on is moving back and forth. And I remember going, this is kind of cool. It's almost a shame it's only a hallucination. It'd be fun to videotape. And then the last thing that happened, which was the one that creeped me out, and even then, I knew it was a hallucination. It was just a creepy hallucination. And so I saw the basketball thing. If I turn the lights, have the lights run. If I turn the lights off, which is how I normally sleep, and I looked up, it looked like there was a ring of hooded figures standing around and looking down on me laying in bed.
Hmm.
I don't believe it was paranormal because it didn't have the traits of a haunting, even though they looked like that. But it was still deeply unpleasant. And after 2 days of trying the damn drug and having hallucinations both nights and not getting any extra sleep because I was in a period of really bad insomnia, I said, okay, screw this shit, and got rid of it.
Yeah. You ever just
So
try
Lord,
melatonin?
um, I've tried just about everything you could think of, melatonin included, and nothing.
Hmm.
I go through everyone. It's once in a while, and actually the last few days I've been sleeping more at least. But I've gone through almost everything you can think of, and nothing particularly helps.
Yeah.
One of the worst problems I have, which as I understand is one of the hardest things types of insomnia to deal with, is where I'll fall asleep, sleep for a couple hours, then I wake up. And the big problem with that with drugs is by the time that it becomes a problem, by the time that you've woken up and it's become a problem and you didn't get enough sleep, the drug would have worn off.
Hmm.
But I will add that Lord commented diet dry eptamine occasional entity encounters and experience have many similarities with non-drug entity encounter experiences such as those described in religious alien abduction and near-death contexts. That's fascinating. We'll get into that and get back and talk about it, and we'll actually look into it this time. But it is now 9:04. I do have work tomorrow. It's probably a good time to get things wrapped up. Folks, that's probably going to do it for tonight. I want to thank all the people listening now or in the future who join in. I want to we have reached 10 years on YouTube. It is very much an accomplishment I am proud of. We're not done yet, as you may have heard just here at the end when we are talking about new guests and new topics and things to cover. So you ain't seen nothing yet. But that's going to do it for tonight, folks. I want to thank everybody for tuning in. This is Samantha Mears, your demonologist, paranormal investigator, and the Paranormal Encyclopedia saying good night and God bless.
And Brian McKinley saying, keep your fangs sharp.
Good night, everybody. Real quick, just remember if you like what we're doing, like, comment, subscribe, consider donating to our Patreon. If you hate what we're doing, downvote, comment on how stupid we are, and then subscribe so you can tell us how wrong we are about everything else. That's going to do it for tonight, folks. Thanks to everyone. Good night. God bless. And good luck.
Right.
Okay. Live stream.